"You're not coming with us, Eleanor," Vanessa said with a smile so polished it almost looked kind. Almost. The airport terminal buzzed around us, rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, children laughing somewhere near the coffee stand, but all I could hear was the sharp little satisfaction hiding underneath my daughter-in-law's voice. I stared at her for a moment, honestly thinking I must have misunderstood. Daniel stood beside her, wearing a navy quarter-zip sweater I'd bought him last Christmas, his hand wrapped around the handle of an expensive leather suitcase I didn't recognize. He wouldn't look at me. Not once. "What do you mean I'm not coming?" I asked quietly. Vanessa let out a small laugh and adjusted the oversized sunglasses resting in her blonde hair. "Oh, Eleanor, we just thought you'd be more comfortable staying home this time. It's really more of an immediate family trip." Immediate family. The words settled into my chest like cold rain. I looked at my son again, waiting for him to say something, anything. A correction. An apology. Maybe even embarrassment. Instead, he rubbed the back of his neck and muttered, "Mom, it's just easier this way." Easier. I nodded slowly as if I understood, though my throat suddenly felt too tight to swallow. 3 months earlier, Vanessa had sat at my kitchen table drinking chamomile tea from my favorite porcelain cup while showing me brochures for the resort in Maui. "You have to come with us," she'd insisted back then. "This place is incredible." I remembered her excitement perfectly now, because none of it had been about me. They hadn't wanted my company. They'd wanted my account. Before I could say another word, the young woman behind the resort check-in counter looked up from her computer with a bright professional smile. "Mrs. Whitmore," she called. I turned automatically. "Yes." She smiled wider. "We just need the credit card ending in 4482 to secure the presidential villa and private family excursion package." Silence. Complete silence. Vanessa's smile vanished first. Then Daniel finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time that morning I saw panic creeping into his face. The girl behind the desk blinked politely, unaware she'd just shattered something wide open in the middle of Terminal C. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she repeated gently. "Would you like to keep the same card on file for the entire family stay?" Vanessa stepped forward too quickly. "Actually, we were going to update the payment method later." Her voice sounded tighter now. Nervous. I looked at her carefully, at the carefully curled hair, the cream-colored designer coat, the diamond bracelet dangling from her wrist. Then I looked at my son, 43 years old, and suddenly looking like a little boy caught lying with his hand inside the cookie jar. And right there under those harsh airport lights, with strangers walking past and boarding calls echoing overhead, I realized something that hurt far worse than being excluded from a vacation. They never saw me as family anymore, just the woman paying for it. The drive home felt longer than usual, even though the airport was only 35 minutes from my house. Rain had started falling halfway down Interstate 90, soft at first, then harder against the windshield until the entire world outside blurred into gray streaks and red brake lights. I kept both hands on the steering wheel and replayed every moment at the terminal over and over in my mind. Not the cruel comment itself. Oddly enough, that part hurt less now. It was Daniel's silence that stayed with me. That empty look in his eyes when the receptionist mentioned my credit card. As though he had suddenly remembered something inconvenient about me. Something financial. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light automatically flicked on against the dark afternoon sky. The little yellow glow used to make this house feel warm. Safe. Tonight it just looked lonely. I stepped inside and set my purse on the kitchen counter beside the ceramic fruit bowl my late husband bought during our anniversary trip to Vermont almost 20 years ago. The house smelled faintly like vanilla candles and furniture polish. Quiet, painfully quiet. I opened the refrigerator and stared at the chicken salad I had prepared the night before for the trip. Vanessa had specifically requested it because she said airport food upset her stomach. I almost laughed at that. Instead, I closed the refrigerator door slowly and stood there in silence while the rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows. Something was beginning to shift inside me now. Not rage. Not heartbreak exactly. Clarity. I walked upstairs to my office and turned on the small brass desk lamp beside the computer. Warm golden light filled the room while thunder rumbled faintly outside. My fingers hesitated above the keyboard before I finally logged into my travel rewards account. At first, I thought there had to be some mistake. But charge after charge kept appearing on the screen.
Premium Suite Upgrade.
Couples spa reservations. Private snorkeling excursions. Sunset dinner packages. Champagne service. Nearly every reservation connected directly to my platinum account benefits. My stomach tightened. 3 months ago, Vanessa had insisted it would be easier if she handled the booking details herself because she was better with online travel stuff. I remembered how casually she said it while sitting at my kitchen island scrolling through resort photos on her phone. Back then, I thought she was trying to help. Now I realized she had been studying access points, learning what belonged to me. I clicked deeper into the account history and suddenly noticed something even worse. An authorized secondary user had been added 6 weeks earlier. Vanessa Whitmore. Full booking privileges. Full account access. I stared at her name glowing on the monitor while rainwater slid slowly down the dark window beside me. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times before it stopped. A few seconds later, another call came through. Vanessa this time. I watched her name flash across the screen without moving. Then finally, the voicemail notification appeared. I did not listen to it. Not yet. Because for the first time in a very long time, I wanted them to sit alone with panic the same way they had left me sitting alone at that airport. I barely slept that night. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up trying and wandered downstairs in my robe, the hardwood floors cold. Beneath my feet, the rain had stopped by then, but the house still carried that heavy storm silence, the kind that presses against your ears. I made myself a cup of tea and stood at the kitchen window watching water drip slowly from the maple tree in the backyard. Daniel used to climb that tree when he was 8 years old. He would sit on the lowest branch, pretending it was a pirate ship while I watched from the porch with a glass of lemonade in my hand. Back then he used to wave every few minutes, just to make sure I was still there. Funny how children spend their whole lives checking whether you are watching them, until one day they stop looking back completely. My laptop remained open on the dining room table where I had left it earlier. The glowing screen illuminated the dark room like a quiet accusation. I sat down again and continued scrolling through the account records, slower this time. More carefully. There were things I had missed before. A luxury boutique charge in Maui from 2 months ago. A deposit for a catamaran dinner cruise. Matching spa appointments booked under Daniel and Vanessa's names. And then I saw something that made my chest tighten even harder. 3 separate flights booked last Christmas using my accumulated travel miles. Aspen, Colorado. I stared at the date for several seconds before memory hit me all at once. Last Christmas, Vanessa told me they were staying home because money was tight after some unexpected business expenses. I remembered spending Christmas Eve alone beside the fireplace eating reheated lasagna while watching old black and white movies with the volume turned low. Daniel had called for exactly 4 minutes that night. 4 minutes. Meanwhile, they had been drinking hot chocolate in a ski lodge somewhere under fresh mountain snow using miles I had spent 15 years saving through my retirement account travel program. I leaned back slowly in my chair and closed my eyes. It was not one betrayal. That was the part finally becoming clear. It was a pattern, polished carefully over years. Little exclusions disguised as misunderstandings. Forgotten invitations. Changed plans. Quiet manipulations wrapped in polite smiles. Vanessa had never pushed me out all at once. She had done it inch by inch until loneliness started feeling normal. My phone buzzed again against the wooden table. Another voicemail. Then another. Finally, a text from Daniel appeared on the screen. Mom, please answer. There is confusion with the resort billing. Vanessa says the account is frozen. Frozen. I almost smiled at the word. Not because I enjoyed their panic, but because for once they were experiencing uncertainty instead of control. I set the phone face down and walked into the living room where framed family photos lined the shelves beside the fireplace. Hawaii. Thanksgiving dinners. Graduation ceremonies. In every single picture, I noticed the same thing now. Me standing slightly off to the side, smiling harder than everyone else. As though somewhere deep inside, I had already been trying to earn a place in my own family. The next morning arrived cold and painfully bright. Sunlight poured through the dining room windows as if nothing had changed, illuminating the dust floating quietly above the table. I stood there holding a coffee mug between both hands while the house settled around me with familiar little sounds. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking wall clock near the pantry, the heater clicking on against the early October chill. Ordinary sounds. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. My phone had stopped buzzing sometime around midnight. No more calls. No more frantic messages. Just silence again. I should have felt relieved, but instead the quiet only gave my thoughts more room to wander backward. That was the dangerous thing about betrayal. Once you finally saw it clearly, your mind started reopening every memory you once protected. I carried my coffee upstairs and opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were old photo albums, receipts, birthday cards, little pieces of a life I had spent decades building. I found a photograph of Daniel from his college graduation in Boston. He was 22 years old, standing beside me in a wrinkled blue gown with his arm wrapped tightly around my shoulders. We both looked exhausted. Back then I was working double shifts at the medical billing office during the day and cleaning offices downtown 3 nights a week just to help cover his tuition after his father passed away. I still remembered driving home at 1 a.m. with aching feet and fast food coffee balanced in the cup holder because I was terrified of falling asleep at the wheel. But every time exhaustion hit me, I would picture Daniel walking across that graduation stage. That image carried me through years of tiredness, years of sacrifice. I traced my fingers lightly across the edge of the photograph. "I will take care of you someday, Mom," he had whispered to me after the ceremony while hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. At the time, I believed him completely.
I wanted to.
Parents always want to believe the best parts of their children will survive adulthood. Then Vanessa entered our lives. Beautiful, charming, smooth in a way that made everyone instantly trust her. During their first Thanksgiving together, she insisted on helping me in the kitchen. She complimented my recipes, laughed at my stories, even called me Mom after only 6 months. Looking back now, I realized she had studied people the way some women studied catalogs.
Carefully.
Patiently. She always knew exactly what to say to make others lower their guard. My eyes drifted toward another photo buried underneath the stack. Maui. 5 years ago. The 4 of us standing on a beach at sunset with our arms linked together. Daniel smiling. Vanessa leaning her head lightly against his shoulder. Me standing at the edge again, smiling too hard. Suddenly, I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. Vanessa's eyes were not on the camera. They were fixed on me. Not warmly. Not lovingly. Calculating. As though even then she had already been measuring how useful I might become to her future. I slowly closed the photo album and sat very still on the edge of the bed while sunlight stretched across the carpet in long golden lines. Somewhere deep inside me, grief was beginning to harden into something colder, something steadier. And for the first time since the airport, I no longer felt confused. I felt awake. By late afternoon, the sunlight had faded into a dull silver haze across the neighborhood, and the temperature dropped fast enough for me to hear the old pipes creak softly inside the walls. I had just finished watering the plants near the back patio when the phone rang again. This time it was not Daniel. The number showed a Hawaii area code. For a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail like the others, but something in me shifted. I answered quietly. "Mrs. Whitmore?" a calm female voice asked. "My name is Margaret Ellis. I am the senior guest accounts manager at the Hale Kai Resort." I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, my fingers tightening around the cordless phone. Margaret's voice carried that polished professionalism people develop after years of handling uncomfortable situations with wealthy guests. But underneath it, I detected hesitation, carefulness. "I apologize for contacting you directly," she continued, "but I believe there were several irregularities involving your premium account, and after what happened at check-in this morning, I felt you deserved clarity."
Clarity.
The word landed heavier than I expected. Outside the kitchen windows, the wind stirred dry leaves across the backyard deck while I listened in complete silence. Margaret explained that over the past 6 months, Vanessa had repeatedly contacted the resort requesting expanded authorization privileges tied to my membership profile. Additional room access, executive dining approval, VIP transportation upgrades, private billing transfers. At first, the requests appeared normal because family members often shared travel benefits. But then Margaret paused. 3 weeks ago, she said carefully, your daughter-in-law attempted to classify herself as the primary financial controller attached to your account. I felt my heartbeat slow instead of quicken. Oddly enough, the truth no longer shocked me. It only rearranged old pain into a clearer picture. She told us your memory had become unreliable, Margaret added quietly. The room went completely still around me. Even the heater seemed to stop humming. I stared at the small ceramic sugar bowl in the center of the table, while those words echoed. Inside my chest. Unreliable. Not old. Not tired. Not emotional. Unreliable. The kind of word people use when they are preparing to replace someone. Margaret continued speaking gently, explaining that certain employees became uncomfortable because Vanessa seemed unusually focused on long-term account control rather than temporary trip access. Then she said something that made my throat tighten unexpectedly. I saw the way you looked at the airport today, Mrs. Whitmore. You looked blindsided. I do not think you understood how much had already been arranged behind your back. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I could hear distant lobby music playing faintly through her phone line, soft piano melodies drifting somewhere inside that expensive oceanfront resort where my son and his wife were probably scrambling to explain frozen reservations and decline charges. Finally, I asked the question sitting quietly beneath everything else. Did Daniel know? Margaret hesitated. Just long enough. Your son signed several authorization confirmations personally. I closed my eyes. That hurt more than anything Vanessa had ever done. Because manipulation from strangers was painful, but permission from your own child was something entirely different. After the call ended, I remained seated at the kitchen table while evening shadows slowly filled the room. Then I reached for my laptop again. Not with confusion this time. Not even sadness. With purpose. That evening I did something I had not done in years. I stopped waiting for someone else to explain things to me. The sky outside had turned deep blue by the time I carried my laptop into the study and closed the door behind me. A small lamp glowed beside the bookshelf, casting soft amber light across the room while wind rattled lightly against the windows. The house no longer felt sad tonight. It felt still focused somehow. I opened every account connected to my travel profile one by one. Credit cards, reward memberships, linked banking permissions, emergency contacts, authorized users. The list was longer than I expected. Vanessa's name appeared everywhere like fingerprints left behind after a burglary nobody noticed. Happening.
Spa memberships.
Airline loyalty access. Resort partnerships. Even my private airport lounge account. My stomach tightened again when I realized how gradually it had happened. One request here. One favor there. It will make booking easier. You know technology overwhelms you sometimes. Just let me help, Eleanor. Help. Funny word. I picked up my reading glasses from the desk and rubbed the bridge of my nose slowly. Then I began removing her access. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Quietly. Click by click. Confirmation window after confirmation window disappeared from the screen while the grandfather clock downstairs echoed through the silent house every 15 minutes. At 9:30, my phone rang again. Daniel. This time I answered. For several seconds, all I heard was resort music and distant voices in the background. Then my son exhaled sharply. Mom, what is going on? I leaned back calmly in the leather chair. That depends, I said softly. What did you think was going to happen? Silence. Heavy silence. I could picture him standing somewhere inside that enormous marble hotel lobby trying to keep his voice low while guests walked past carrying beach towels and shopping bags. Vanessa says there is some misunderstanding with the account permissions, he finally said. Misunderstanding. There was that word again. The adult version of a lie wrapped in softer clothing. Daniel, I asked quietly, did you sign authorization forms giving your wife control over my accounts? Another silence. Longer this time. Then came the answer I already knew. It was only supposed to help with travel planning. I closed my eyes briefly. Not because I was emotional anymore, but because disappointment had weight to it. Physical weight, like carrying wet sand inside your chest. She told the resort my memory was unreliable, I said. I heard his breathing catch immediately. Somewhere behind him, Vanessa's voice appeared faintly in the distance, tense and hurried. Daniel lowered his voice further. Mom, please, can we talk about this when we get home? Home. Such a simple word for a place people only appreciate after they risk losing it. I looked around my quiet study filled with family photographs, old books, and 20 years of careful memories. Then I opened the final account settings tab on my screen and removed every remaining shared authorization connected to both Daniel and Vanessa. No, I said calmly. We are talking about it now. Then, before he could answer, I pressed the button ending the call. Outside the window, the wind continued moving through the trees, while inside the house, something inside me finally settled into place. They had mistaken my kindness for dependency. And people who make that mistake rarely see the ending coming. The next morning, my house felt unusually peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows in soft golden strips, while fresh coffee brewed quietly beside the stove. For the first time in days, I did not wake up with anxiety sitting on my chest. I moved slowly through the morning, feeding the birds outside the patio door, watering the herb pots near the sink, folding laundry while an old jazz station played softly in the background. It almost frightened me how calm I felt. Then around 11:15, my phone exploded with notifications all at once.
Calls,
Texts, voicemails, one after another until the screen barely stopped vibrating. I stared at it for several seconds before finally picking it up. Vanessa's name appeared first, then Daniel, then Vanessa again. I opened the newest message. Eleanor, call us now. The resort canceled the yacht excursion because the payment authorization disappeared. Another message arrived before I could even lock the screen. They're saying our villa access is restricted unless billing is resolved immediately. I could practically hear the panic dripping through every word. I set the phone back down beside my coffee cup and continued folding towels. White bath towels first, then the blue hand towels from the upstairs guest bathroom. Small, ordinary tasks suddenly felt grounding in a way they never had before. Meanwhile, somewhere nearly 4,000 miles away, chaos was unfolding inside a luxury resort lobby built on the illusion of endless comfort. Around noon, Daniel finally reached me through the house phone.
His voice sounded strained.
And exhausted the second I answered. Mom, please stop doing this. I looked out the kitchen window at two sparrows fighting over seeds near the bird feeder. Doing what exactly? I asked calmly. He exhaled sharply. The hotel locked us out of the premium suite this morning. Vanessa's spa package was canceled. The concierge said all transportation services were suspended too. Suspended. Such a clean corporate word for humiliation. I imagined Vanessa standing there in oversized sunglasses and expensive sandals while hotel employees politely explained that the account holder had revoked access. My silence stretched long enough to make Daniel uncomfortable. Finally, he lowered his voice. Mom, people are staring. I almost laughed then, not because it was funny, but because for years he never noticed when I felt embarrassed. When I sat alone at holidays. When invitations disappeared. When restaurant bills somehow drifted quietly toward my side of the table every single time. But now suddenly public discomfort mattered. Daniel, I said softly, did you think luxury came from nowhere? He did not answer immediately. In the background, I heard muffled arguing. Vanessa's voice sharp and hurried. A hotel employee speaking in rehearsed customer service tones. Somewhere nearby, tropical music floated faintly through open lobby doors while paradise slowly cracked apart around them. We just need a few days until the bank transfer clears, Daniel muttered finally. There it was. The truth hiding beneath everything else. They never planned to pay for any of it themselves. I closed my eyes briefly and leaned back against the kitchen counter. The realization no longer hurt. It exhausted me. No, Daniel, I said quietly. You planned a vacation you could not afford because you assumed I would always absorb the cost. Another silence followed. Heavy. breathing filled with shame. Then for the first time since all this began, my son sounded small again. Mom, what are we supposed to do? I stared at the sunlight warming the wooden floor beneath my feet and answered honestly. I think it is time you figure that out without using me. 3 days passed before I saw them. Again. By then the house had settled back into its familiar rhythm. Quiet mornings, cool evenings, the smell of cinnamon tea drifting through the kitchen around sunset. Outside, autumn had fully arrived. Red and gold leaves scattered across the front lawn while cold wind moved through the trees with that dry whispering sound October always brings. I was sitting on the back patio wrapped in a cream-colored sweater when Daniel's car finally pulled into the driveway just after 6 in the evening. I watched through the glass door as both of them stepped out slowly. Vanessa no longer looked polished. Her hair was tied back carelessly beneath a baseball cap, and the expensive confidence she usually carried around like perfume seemed cracked around the edges. Daniel looked worse. Exhausted.
Pale.
Older somehow. For a moment neither of them came to the door. They just stood there under the fading porch light arguing quietly beside the car while cold air stirred fallen leaves around their shoes. Then finally Daniel knocked. I opened the door without speaking and stepped aside. The tension entered the house before they did. Vanessa glanced around the living room awkwardly, while Daniel kept rubbing his palms together like he was trying to warm them. Nobody sat down immediately. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, Vanessa spoke first. Eleanor, I think this situation has gotten completely out of hand. Out of hand. Another carefully chosen phrase designed to make betrayal sound accidental. I folded my hands calmly in front of me. Has it? I asked softly. Daniel exhaled sharply and finally sat down on the edge of the couch. Mom, the resort charged us additional fees after the account was frozen. We had to downgrade rooms. Vanessa's credit cards maxed out. It became a mess. I nodded once. I imagine it did. Vanessa crossed her arms tightly. You embarrassed us. That word hung in the room for several seconds. Embarrassed. Not hurt you. Not betrayed you. Not lied to you. Embarrassed us. I looked directly at her for the first time since they walked inside. No, Vanessa, I said quietly. You embarrassed yourselves the moment you built a luxury vacation on money that did not belong to you. Her jaw tightened immediately. Daniel stared down at the floor. Somewhere upstairs the old heating vents hummed softly through the walls while darkness settled outside the windows. Vanessa tried again, softer this time. We were going to pay you back eventually. Eventually. I almost smiled at how people always use vague future promises when they never intended to do something in the first place. Daniel suddenly leaned forward, his voice cracking slightly. Mom, I know we handled things badly, but freezing everything without warning, that was harsh. Harsh. I stared at my son for a long moment, remembering little boy pirate ships in the backyard tree, graduation hugs, Christmas phone calls that became shorter every year. Then I answered with complete honesty. Do you know what was harsh, Daniel? My voice stayed calm, steady, standing in an airport while my own family treated me like an inconvenience, while still expecting me to pay for the ocean view. Silence filled the room immediately after that. Heavy silence. The kind people cannot escape from with excuses. Vanessa looked away first. Daniel covered his face briefly with one trembling hand. And for the first time since all of this began, neither of them looked angry anymore. They looked ashamed. After Daniel and Vanessa left that night, I stood alone by the front window watching their car disappear slowly down the street beneath the orange glow of the streetlights. Neither of them looked back toward the house. For a long time, I remained there in silence with my arms folded tightly against the cold, listening to the wind move through the trees outside. The anger I expected to feel never really came. Neither did triumph, just exhaustion and, underneath it, something quieter, relief. Over the next few weeks the calls became less frequent. The frantic messages stopped first. Then the excuses. Then the awkward attempts to act as though nothing serious had happened. Daniel still texted occasionally, usually short, careful messages asking how I was doing or whether I needed help around the house. I answered politely, but something between us had changed in a way neither of us fully knew how to repair yet.
Trust does not shatter loudly the way people think.
Sometimes it erodes slowly, like waves wearing down stone year after year, until one day the shape is completely different. One chilly November morning, I woke before sunrise and made myself coffee in complete darkness, except for the small light above the stove. The house felt peaceful again. Not empty. Peaceful. That distinction mattered more than I realized. I carried my mug onto the back patio, wrapped in a thick sweater, while pale morning light stretched slowly across the yard. Frost covered the grass in delicate silver patterns, and somewhere nearby a dog barked softly in the distance. I sat there breathing in the cold air and thinking about how many years I spent trying to earn comfort from people who should have offered it freely. How often I confused usefulness with love. A week later, I booked a small coastal trip for myself along the Oregon shoreline. Nothing extravagant. Just a quiet inn overlooking the ocean with long walking paths and oversized chairs near stone fireplaces. When the confirmation email arrived, I stared at it for several seconds before smiling softly to myself. Not because I was escaping anyone, but because for the first time in years, every reservation carried only my name. No hidden users.
No silent expectations.
No one treating my kindness like an unlimited resource. Just me. On my final evening there, I sat wrapped in a blanket watching waves crash against the dark rocks below while cold sea air tangled gently through my silver hair. The sky burned orange and pink across the horizon as the sun disappeared slowly into the Pacific. And sitting there alone beside the sound of the ocean, I realized loneliness and peace were not always the same thing. Sometimes solitude was simply what remained after you finally stopped begging for a place in rooms where your absence made other people comfortable. If you have ever felt invisible inside your own family, if you have ever been valued more for what you could provide than for who you are, then I hope you remember this. Love should never feel like a transaction.
And
sometimes the quietest people carry the deepest strength. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? And have you ever had someone mistake your kindness for weakness? Share your thoughts and your story in the comments below.